Hi, everyone, and welcome to the LSP Method Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Fern, and I have a special guest. We have Julia Hancock with us. Say hi, Julia.
Hi, nice to see you today.
How you going?
I'm great, thanks. It just struck me, it's really great because being in the UK in the morning and it's evening there, you always feel like you're a bit of a time traveler. So I love that.
It does,
And the
doesn't it?
fact, yeah, and space, time and space,
Yeah,
um, I can be in two places at once, which is quite cool.
yeah, I love it. So we're going to talk about Lego Serious Play, amongst other things. We want to get to know you and how you use Lego Serious Play. So rather than me try and do your background, I thought I'd throw it over to you, and you can tell us about, who you are, a bit about how you got to into Lego Serious Play, and maybe I got you to do a build beforehand that might help you along there. So bring that in whenever you want. But I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, well, it's here.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic! Do you want me to? Oh, let
there
me
we
get you on
go.
the big screen straight up. There we go. Go
You
for
got
it.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new build. Yeah, where do I start? I guess I'm going to start with the green bit with the wing,
Mm,
because I'm an eternal learner, but I'm also an educator through and through. So, whilst I became a teacher later in life, I didn't do the usual route of going to uni and then becoming a teacher. I worked in a bank for a while, um, and then did a degree whilst I was bringing up my kids, and then ended up as a teacher and then, well, a dinner lady for a while, a teacher, and then a head teacher. So I was a head
mm,
teacher of three primary schools in the UK before becoming Boundless Learning.
mm,
Um, so that's kind of my entity now.
mm,
And it truly is boundless, which is quite difficult when you've got a piece of Lego that's kind of got edges.
mm,
But what I like about the blue edge is it's curved, so it's kind of like a horizon. Um,
yeah.
and that links with me as boundless. I always say I want to try and enable people to move beyond their known horizon or their perceived boundaries.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so the growth and the green and the wing is enabling people to grow.
yeah.
And the curved edge of the blue is the horizon, but also the sea and water, because water is really important to me.
Yeah.
I swim. I love to be at the beach. Um, Yeah, so those things, and it nourishes me.
Mm,
So anytime I'm by water, that's when I'm probably most present.
mm,
And that matters to me too, especially at the moment. So my own learnings around embodied transformation at the moment
mm,
kind of links with the Lego Serious Play.
mm,
Because as an educator, I've always been committed to like the social constructivist idea of having something tangible to
mm,
hang the learning on. So that's the whole model, really.
mm,
With the window as that reflective lens, so you can see in and out. And I like that when I'm working with, when I'm coaching or supervising clients, it's that idea of there's two sides to it, but it can be really open.
mm.
Um, yeah, I lead with love, so the heart is right in the middle.
Ah, yeah.
If you see the Lego hearts there, I'm absolutely passionate about leading with love. And one of my other key values is the little yellow brick. I'm committed to enabling more joy in the world.
Mm,
And joy is really important to me. I did some work on that. I went through a bit of a dark time after I left my last school.
mm,
Um, and kind of felt disconnected from purpose for a while. So I kind of realized that joy, excuse me,
mhm,
joy was important to me because I knew what it was like to kind of lose sight of that, which is
interesting.
why in anything I do with my clients, I'm really connected to ensuring they fulfill their purpose. They feel connected to their own joy. So
Mm,
that's there in the middle. Um, the pink brick was an interesting one. So I generally like a brick that's a bit clear or opaque.
mm.
So there was always going to be sort of a clear brick in there, but then I chose the pink one and I thought, what's that? You can see the pink wall behind me.
Yeah.
It could be an extension of joy, but I think I talk about playful curiosity a lot.
Mm,
And that kind of links with my attitude to learning, that learning should be an enjoyable experience. And inspirational, which is up here.
ah,
Um,
yep.
so I think the pink brick is something to do with that playful curiosity, but I'm still playing with it. I
Okay.
I, I keep coming back to it, which is the joy of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, there's a little envelope, I think
Okay.
that's from a Harry Potter set, but I get
Mm,
them from the Lego Pick-a-Mix. So I have quite a few of those. Communication is important to me. As an educator, I've done a lot of research around emotional intelligence, emotional literacy.
mm,
And then that led to working with the Royal Shakespeare Company and projects with schools,
mm,
and developing children's ability to use oracy to support their command of communication, whether that was spoken, written, or reading.
mm.
So yeah, that has to go in there really. And that's it. I said to you before we started, I felt like I probably should have had Shakespeare sitting on here somewhere, because I'm just fascinated by how his language connects with us in body, mind, and soul.
Mm,
And the power of that with kids is just phenomenal. So some of my work that I'm still kind of looking to do, and I'm writing a book about, is that
mm,
how that connection with the rhythm of the language really connects with us.
mm.
Um, and then I added, well, there's a little frog I haven't touched on yet, and there's a steering wheel right in the middle. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Um, I added that this morning because I actually did this build yesterday, and it felt important to put it in there.
Mm,
There's something about the connection that's, this is the entity of me, I
mm,
guess. And then this is where I meet people. So I think there's something about how you facilitate that, and how anything I do is mutual.
mm.
Either of us can drive at any point, but it's driving towards a sense of purpose, I
Yeah.
think,
You think?
is what that is.
Yeah.
But I hope what you can see in that is I'm kind of driven to make a difference. That lies in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, and potentially what I'm noticing is coming through is I am, and I know this, I'm really values driven.
Mm,
Um, but in service to a lot of people, really, I want to make a real difference to people's lives. So the little frog that's sitting on the top, and these again, he's I've just realised he's probably a chocolate frog or something from a Harry Potter set. But I did some work on positive intelligence, and that's another element of what I've worked on, both personally and with clients,
mm.
on those saboteurs that sit jabbering away at us when we kind of have a moment and think we're not good enough, or
Yeah.
everybody else is better than me. So I put that in there because sometimes it's nice to stop those chatters and like kind of really empower people. So he's sitting on the he's on the top of the window. We know
Mm,
he's there, or she, it could be either.
mm,
My little voice is a frog. Um, but we can just hold them at bay and
mm.
maybe include them and recognize they're there, but actually all of this sort of stuff is more important, and keeping the inspiration going
Yeah.
and keeping an eye on where it is we want to be. So yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. There's so many things you said there. I was like, I got to remember this. I got to remember that. I got to ask questions about this and that. Just a couple of thoughts. I love, I mean, there's so much in there, and just the way I've said this before as well, where the way you can spatially orient all those different facets of you. You talk about where you put the frog, and you talked about the connection between sort of you and, that window and inspiration, and, even to the point of, I presume like 12 hours later, putting the steering wheel in there as well
Mhm.
as a way to connect those two. That's one of the things I love about Lego Serious, but I just don't think you can have that grouping or that connection of ideas just verbally or even drawing. It's the way you've spatially oriented everything has such meaning. So I love
Yeah.
that. One thing I wanted to pick
Yeah.
up on, oh, go on, you're going to say?
No, it's really what obviously I've worked with lots of children, lots of adults who
Mm,
have all got different backgrounds, all got and often you sit with someone who's got a real model in their brain.
mm,
I think I am learning, and to my husband's relief, who has been married to me for more years than I can remember, that I've possibly got ADHD, and going through that process,
mm.
I can make links with lots of things, but I guess that's the joy of finding Lego Serious Play, because
Mm.
I can organize it. All the
Yeah.
things that are in my brain that make perfect sense to me, I can put down and somebody else can understand it.
Yeah.
Whereas at times that's been hard. And I realized that some of the ways I've worked with kids over the years, and certainly adults, that tends to be, rather than it being something that gets in the way, I think it's my superpower. I can
Mm.
start helping people make the links between things because actually that's what I have to do on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
yeah. And it reminds me of one of the ways, there's many ways we can describe Lego series play, but one of them is just those windows into each of our minds. Like all we're trying to do with everything is communicate to each other. Like I'm trying to peek into your mind and, get a feel for what you actually think about something, and you're trying to do the same with my mind. And I think you saying, that, maybe maybe ADHD, maybe not, you're going through that process, but understanding your mind, but being able to sort of share that with in a Lego model,
Mm,
and, put those thoughts in some sort of order that is that common base language with the other person and the different mind that they have. And
yeah,
I often say it's about learning a new language together. And, it's one that seems to fit with a lot of people. They do it well, if you give them those few prompts at the start. And yeah, it just reminded me when you said that, it's like, yeah, it's like you're translating that from your mind, however it is to the model. And then I'm translating it from my mind into my model. And then it's that shared sort of communication space that we're then
absolutely.
interacting within. Love it.
And on a deeply emotional connection at times, which is
Mm,
can be quite frightening for some people who
mm,
don't naturally feel able to open up.
yeah.
I often say with Lego Serious Play, I don't think I have another tool that connects so quickly and
Mm,
so deeply. And it's magic. It just
yeah.
seems to work every time.
Yeah.
I was at a conference. This sticks out in my mind. I was at a conference and I just had a stand at the conference. I wasn't speaking at the conference, but I took obviously copious amounts of Lego.
Yeah.
And I have like little prompt cards that I kind of build up and put out.
Yeah.
So I'd put these out. And when people walk into a conference and it's when they don't know anybody, it's all a little stilted until
Yeah.
they have a cup of coffee or tea and they start kind of making small talk. And we inevitably talk about the weather in the UK
Yeah.
or how people got there, how they got there, and what the traffic was like. Um, but there was a teacher. She was a teacher, came in and she came straight to my table, had a look, and she said, "Is it okay if I take some of this to a table over there?" And I said, "Of course it is."
Yeah.
And she sat and made a model because I'd put the prompts out, brought it back to the table because we'd got a sheet of paper out and we were all collating them with little messages.
Yeah.
Um, and she thanked me and she said, "Can I keep the Lego on the table because other people have come to join me and we're all talking."
Yeah.
But she said to me, she was autistic, and she
Mm,
said, "I nearly didn't come today." And she said, "As soon as I came in, I felt safe because I love Lego."
mm,
She said, "I took it to the table so I could sit and play with Lego, but other people came to talk to me, so it reduced that social anxiety."
yeah.
Um, and those people stayed with her the rest of the day because she'd found a tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
love that. What a great
yeah,
story.
so it's when you think it facilitates such deep connection, even with people you don't really know that well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I often say like that warm-up activity I got you to do, which is build a tower with you in it. It's one of the things that I do for everyone, in my workshops. And sometimes I
Yeah,
think it, potentially goes too deep too quick. It's sort of like I say, throw them
yeah,
in the deep end and then sort of teach them how to swim.
yeah,
But I mean, the reason I do it is because it just leads to so much so soon. Like, it just cuts to the chase.
yeah,
It really does. And I've often reflected on why it does that. And I think it's because it is something new. And, there's all the playful element of it. It just brings down a lot of barriers very quickly for people.
yeah,
Whether they are connected with the Lego brand or not connected with the Lego brand as adults, but it just brings those barriers down so quickly. And I've mentioned the paradox before where Lego Serious Play takes a little bit of time to do in a sort of formal workshop type setting, but it's like you get to the heart of the matter so much quicker. So it's like it takes time, but it's quicker. And I think that is hard for people to wrap their heads around. But your example of that person just described it beautifully. That, she just did a little model and it helped sort of get to that point where she found her tribe, even
yeah,
quicker.
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I've just reflected on that because, yeah, you're right. With a session, it can take a bit of time to set up and everything else. But even when I meet, because I do quite a lot of coaching online, and when I meet with a client, sometimes it'll be just choose one brick. Where are you today? Or choose, like the what 3 words, choose
Mm,
3 bricks. What's going on for you right now?
mm,
So actually, it's just it can be a really good way just to ground, or like you say, we bring ourselves to it. So
mm,
it's a personal choice. Everybody's got something to say. Those warm-ups where you sit and you've got to do a bit of an intro and you think, God, what
mm.
am I going to say?
Yeah,
Everybody's got something to talk about as soon
yeah,
as there's bricks there.
yeah,
Um, where, like you say, whether or not they connect with the brand or not, it's irrelevant. It's just,
yeah,
oh, what's this?
yeah.
I mean, you put it on the table, everybody's going, when can I touch it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's
It's like
a
now,
bit
go
like,
for it, go for it.
yeah, just get
Um,
in there.
I wanted to dive into in a minute like the ways you use it. You mentioned it a couple of times, but I want to actually go back to your little intro. And there's a phrase you used that fascinated me. I've been meaning to ask you about is that embodied transformation. I think you
Yeah.
mentioned that. So tell me a bit about that. Like, what's that sort of work and like?
Well, it's in the realm of somatics. So I don't know, there's a lot of talk about somatics at the moment, but it's something I've come to organically along the way, and it kind of links to how I work how I've always worked as an educator.
Mm,
In fact, it's in my next build. So this was the bit I was going to talk about.
okay.
I've become increasingly fascinated. I mentioned emotional literacy has always been important to me.
Mm,
When I started working with the Royal Shakespeare Company on getting plays up on their feet with kids and
mm.
playing with them because they're
Yeah.
plays, what was fascinating was the physical connection with the words,
Mm,
and what that layered in. Because Shakespeare writes mainly in iambic pentameter, so the heartbeat stuff
mm.
you actually physically feel.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I was seeing how children felt the words or enacted the words linked
Mm,
to their emotional connection, but it was a physical being.
yeah.
Um, and that made sense to me as an educator in terms of in maths, we often use equipment to develop mathematical understanding.
Yeah.
But when it comes to reading and writing, that can be a really abstract concept. We've got a bunch of symbols here that mean that A, we've got to decode, and then B, we've got to understand.
Mm,
Now, for children for whom language is a bit more challenging, that's hard.
yeah.
But when I've worked with the Shakespeare texts, they get it. They
Yeah.
don't even have to have a dictionary to work out the words, they get it.
Yeah.
So watching that and thinking, so what does that mean about physicality? What does that mean about the physical entity in terms of feeling and thinking? So joining mind and soul and body all
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Really fascinated me. So my learning journey as a coach took me into the realms of the psych, and I don't know whose branch it is, and I should. The branch of psychology that talks about the 4 intelligences, not like multiple intelligence theory, but I
Yeah.
sat in a meeting and I thought I should know this as an educator. I really should know this. That actually, when I first came into education, it was all about cognition. It was all
Mm,
about IQ. Um, and early on in my career, because of a class that I worked with, I really had to kind of push for an emotional intelligence approach way before lots of people were.
mm,
And I contacted actually Peter Salovey, who was phenomenal in terms of that.
mm.
And he put me onto people in America that were doing research. So the emotional intelligence and emotional literacy thing has always been part of my background,
Yeah.
and I guess that's why I am where I am now,
Yeah.
and working with people to align their emotional intelligence with their cognitive or strategic stuff, if you like.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about this bodily stuff, and then came across somatics and just thought, oh, we're disconnected from our bodies, and kids aren't. Kids
Yeah.
get it. So I thought, where does that fit? So I'm learning about it, and
Mm,
I've learned so much about our internal systems, the polyvagal theories and everything,
mm,
about how we get into the space where we can learn.
mm.
And I've known it intuitively for a long
Yeah.
time, but actually learning about it I see a link between what we do physically ourselves and then what we represent in Lego, and actually the physical act of putting that all together as well, and how
Yeah.
that feels when we do it. It's kind of like magic.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good way to describe it. It's interesting you mentioned about kids. Kids know that, like in terms of working with their
Mm.
body and feeling stuff. And it's interesting with Lego Serious Play, like often one of the barriers I face is trying to shift people's idea of what Lego is. And not so much as participants. Like once I get them in the room, I've got them. And it's like I
Yeah,
can, I can get them to where I need to, but it's almost like before that, it's the potential client or the potential person.
yeah,
And one of the barriers there is sort of shifting them away from this idea that it's a kid's toy. But the irony of that is when we use the method, we cycle back to, all these things that we knew as kids. It's play. What's play? It's the first way that we interact with the world, and we
mm,
explore and we discover, and it's messy and we try, and the physical nature that you're talking about, like it's very embodied, and I'm just thinking my 3.5-year-old and how much she's in her body.
yeah,
And so there's all these things about that sort of child state when we first come into the world, that sort of first 10 years that sort of goes in the next 10 and 20 and 30 years as we become adults. And yeah, so I just thought it's this irony that you've got to get past people's idea that Lego is a child's toy, but the state we're getting people into is more akin to being a child than we sort of care to admit. So it's just an interesting thought as you were
yeah. It
talking.
is. Well, and who says play's not worth it? And
Mm,
I think there's a lot, especially with the way the world is at the moment. There's a pressing need for us
mm.
to play with purpose,
Yeah,
to to
definitely.
put to get more innovative, to look at what's currently not working and think, is there a
Mm,
different way of doing this?
mm,
And the only way you get to do that is to play with ideas, or to play with concepts, or to play with things and think, what's purposeful here?
yeah.
So an absolute correlation, and I feel what you're saying, that which is why my second model was all about
Oh, bring it
what
in. Bring it in. Let
what's
me.
not in the industry enough, and it was
Yeah.
play.
Oh,
But it
cool. Yeah.
more than, it was playfulness.
Yeah. I love that.
I remember my first interview as a teacher, the head asked me what my philosophy for education was, and I said focused fun. And I meant it. I
Mm,
didn't mean fun in a banal or fluffy sense. It
mm,
often gets called fluffy.
yeah.
Um, and I feel the same way as you. Sometimes you feel like you're having to convince people this is going to work to get in the door, when actually it's the most meaningful way of
Mm,
getting everybody in the room. It's so inclusive, to contribute. I mean,
mm,
I've done a project with the Chartered College of Teaching in the UK. And when I went to work with the school on their curriculum, I took my Lego, and they
mm,
looked at me and I said, trust me. And I said, just build me how your curriculum is working right now.
mm,
Um, and because it's metaphorical thinking, isn't it? So that
mm,
off the go with it all. And I said, right, where are your children? Once they got the curriculum, I
mm,
said, show me where your children are in that. Where are you? Where are your governing body? Where's your community and your parents?
mm,
And as soon as they could see it, and they created it, and they owned it as well, which
mm.
was important,
Yeah.
they started to see what it was that they wanted to do to make that even better.
Yeah.
But it took me, I was there for 6 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
And I did some introductory work around it. So I had done some individual stuff with them.
Yeah.
Um, but what we got out of that 6 hours, if I'd have done that in a more traditional sense, it probably would have taken me 3 visits.
Yeah. Yeah. And they wouldn't have felt the ownership
No,
and the feeling that they got there because it's their
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, what it spurred was what they did with staff after that. So
Mm,
often when you've worked with someone, you think about, how do I make this sustainable? How do I create that motivation to take it forward? I didn't
mm,
have to do that, because the
yeah.
model was in the room.
Yeah.
Staff were all like, what's this?
Yeah.
And they could share it with the children, they could share it with a wider community. And
Yeah.
it's obviously, I've done more work since with them, but it was just such a wonderful experience, and to
Mm,
play together, because we didn't know each other that well. It
mm,
forged those relationships really quickly.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, when you ask me what is it that in the I guess in the playground that I'm in, or
Yeah.
my industry, what is it that there's not enough on? And it makes me sad to say this because
Mm,
it's education that I work in a lot. It's that playfulness is still in the realms of some children and perhaps not
mm,
all children now, because learning
yeah.
seems to be a serious business. And it
Yeah.
is serious, but actually, if we're not playing, it's not going to be as memorable or as useful, I don't think.
Yeah.
So this was my build.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Let me get you back
the
up on the big
hearts,
screen there.
the hearts are still there because it connects. There's a connecting piece, so it connects
Mm,
um, hearts and minds.
yeah.
Um, the yellow's still there. The joy is still there. There's
Mm,
green for growth. There is analytical, and blue always is my analytical brick or my strategic brick.
yeah.
It's building us, there's a strategy around it. So it's building a structure,
Mm,
which Lego does. So it's not kind of random fun or random joy or random
mm,
play. And anybody who works in an early years setting knows that it may look like just play to everybody, but it is really not. It's really serious joined up learning.
yeah.
Um, so that's the serious joined up learning, but with the wonder of the magic wand right in the
In the
middle, because
middle.
that's what we create.
Lovely. Oh, I love it. I love your use of color as well around the analytical block and I love
Yeah,
just as a reflection on your model, I love in the talk before as well, I loved your use of the word playfulness and playful. And I often think, if you think of play, it's thought of as an activity. You go and play sports or you play this, but that play and playfulness it's an attitude, it's a mindset, it's a lens to turn, a hat to put on to do work.
yeah.
Um, and
And
yeah,
it, yeah,
there you
to
go.
me, it's about curiosity as well. I mean,
Mm,
I come back, I mentioned Shakespeare, he wrote plays.
mm.
They are they're
Plays,
meant to be
yeah.
played. But he reflected the world back to people,
Mm,
and people connect even now, years and years later. And there's lots of readings around this and around um, diversity at the
mm,
moment. But actually, we can find a character that resonates with us in his plays at
mm,
any point, or a little bit that characters experience it. Um, and play, the words help us play with what's going on for us.
mm.
So to me, that's the important bit about playing all the way through life. What's going on for us, and how can we play with that and really think about it,
Yeah,
um, and feel it in the sense of physically and emotionally and
yeah,
probably spiritually. How
yeah.
does it connect with our values and belief system? Because that's where the juice is, that's where the magic lies.
It is, yeah.
um, and that's what helps us drive ourselves forward in whatever way that is for us, or form our
Mm,
relationships. So yeah,
mm.
it's that connectedness, I think, connecting everything together, that's important. And that also comes back to some of the work I've done with the embodied transformation stuff, because actually I did some work around the polyvagal theory in terms of our states of being.
Mm,
I don't describe it very well because I'm still a novice with it all, but
mhm,
um, basically it's the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And
mm.
if we're in fight or flight mode, or even in freeze, we're not going to learn anything.
Yeah,
We're too busy trying to survive. And certainly it's sort of 2020, we all started just trying to survive, didn't we?
yeah, yeah,
Interestingly, quite a lot of us found different ways to play, like innovative ways to play in our own houses. Zoom
yeah,
helped us do that a lot, which was
true.
interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But if we can get ourselves into a more of a relaxed state where that's calmed down,
Mm,
with a little bit of mobility and a little bit of challenge, then that's where we can sort of, that's the great zone for getting into flow, if you like. That's so
yeah.
um I see Lego and Lego Serious Play being that zone. We come in and we get a bit safe with it, and we do something to protect ourselves into it, and
Mm.
then we add a little question in, just a little bit of challenge, and then we
Yeah,
might
yeah,
add a bit more um as we think. So for me, it's massively inclusive as well, which is all the eyes. It's
yeah.
for everyone. It
Cool. Love
shouldn't
it.
just be
Thanks.
for kids.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And I love the model as well. And like I said, the use of color and the analytical side of things. I was going to say, I want to circle back to just Lego Series Play itself and how you use it. So, what are some of the sessions you do, some recent sessions, sort of the lengths, the topics, the outcomes, all sorts of stuff. So, you mentioned education as sort of a, a field that you really
Yeah.
love and spend a
Yeah.
lot of time in.
Well, yeah, as I was an educator, I don't tend to work in education quite a bit, but not exclusively, I will say. I work in teacher training, so
Okay.
as well. So I've just had a new cohort. So this is one of the most recent things I've done. So on the first, I get them on one of their very first days together as they start their journey as educators, which is great.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
teach the PSHE element, so personal, social, health, and
Oh, yeah.
economic education element. And the provider I work with is really passionate about creating the culture, the positive culture for them, and making it that, thinking about them as people as well. So I start
Mm.
off and integrate some of the rehearsal room strategies I learned through the Shakespeare projects, but also Lego series play. So the first build I always do is build me a tower, tell me something
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
And then they immediately, that gets them all talking because they don't know each other.
Mm.
And then feedback something surprising about each other. And you're establishing how to the process of Lego series play, if you like, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the question around it and everything else. But as time goes on in that group, in terms of the learning I'm doing, it's really great to use it as a reflective tool to think about how they're growing as a teacher and how they're growing in the
Mm.
subject I'm teaching. So I'll
Yeah.
keep coming back to it and say, let's have a build of that in terms of your understanding now. So they start to see it from, and we take
Feel.
photographs, so they've got that journey all the way through.
Yeah. I
So
love that.
that's,
I love
yeah,
the over time bit. Like I do a lot of, hey, here's one workshop and it's very sort of discrete, distinct. I often talk about just stirring the pot, but I love the fact that you get them at like various points and you can see
yeah,
that transformation in the models. And
yeah,
I love builds, just simple builds as a reflection tool of how things are going. And
yeah,
what's your thoughts around that? And I often think you could almost like any program at all, you could slide in Lego Serious Play just as a reflection tool. Like actually just what you
absolutely.
described, like just as a way to set up the program at the start. It's always a great way to get people into it. And then, if it's just a one day, if it's days over, weeks and months and things like that, just reflection pieces, like you said, like that's like the simplest way to slot in Lego Series Play, and yet it's super powerful as
Yeah.
a tool just
I
to
mean,
mix up the
yeah.
other stuff.
And then as an ad hoc sometimes in a coaching conversation,
Mm,
if a client's really struggling with something and can't think, can't see the wood for the trees, rather than us
mm,
talking for an hour, I say, why don't
yeah,
you just build me something and let's see what comes out?
yeah,
And inevitably it does. So there's
yeah,
kind of the long period of time. There's the ad hoc stuff in my coaching, and then I've got programs that I work on. So I'm a
yeah.
resilient leaders elements consultant. So
Mhm, okay.
I've got I've got a program for adults and a program for children as well that
Yeah.
works with Lego and that model. So,
Mm,
and that's the integration of the emotional intelligence and IQ, if you like, or
yeah,
strategic development. So there's ways I'll use it. Like you said, maybe a 6 session approach.
yeah,
I've just recently worked with a bunch of educators who want to use it with children who are in alternative provision in the UK. So children who've maybe been excluded from school or can't access
yeah,
education because they're social emotional and mental health issues. So I worked with a bunch of staff to look at how they can use it and their understanding
mm,
of Lego Serious Play. What came
yeah.
out of that, I went in with it was a 6 session model.
Mm.
And as we were going through, they said, I'm going to use this in staff meetings. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
that they're going to use it on both levels, which links to what I said before. It's not just for the kids, it's for
Yeah, yeah.
everybody. Yeah, so
I love
that
I
was actually quite cool.
yeah, I often say with education, so when I do my training here in Australia and around the world, like I'd say over the last, since the pandemic, I've had more and more educators at all levels. So, secondary
Yeah,
school, like we call it here in Australia, to tertiary education, like universities. And I
yeah,
always say there's more use cases in education than there is in the corporate world. Like we all know Lego Series Play started in
absolutely.
the corporate world, but it's almost like education has the corporate stuff of, within team, maybe between teams, it's an organization, any educational place is an organization in and of itself, but then it's got the students that you
Yeah,
can use it with, and it's got then the role as you're doing with teachers and education and learning, and I see even like people doing their PhD journey, and there's just so many
yeah,
different ways to use in education that
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's great to
and
see.
actually all levels, because you can get like we say, the children, the staff, but also
Mm,
at a leadership level. I mean, when I think back to when I used to have to write the school self-evaluation and the school improvement plan,
mm,
it can be the most onerous task, and you keep thinking, oh,
yeah,
I've got that to do again. And trying to get everybody's views and opinions and
mm,
evidence of impact to then build that together can take, I don't know how many meetings.
yeah.
And I'm only a bit sad that I didn't have this when I was
At the
ahead,
time, oh, I know.
because I would have just said, like in a staff meeting, let's just build where we're at now. I
Yeah.
did it with a head teacher because I do some performance management work with heads and
Mm.
trusts. And she was a bit stressed. She won't mind me saying this. She'll know who
Yeah.
she is when I say it. And she says, "Oh, I haven't done my paper." I said, "Don't worry." I said, Just build me a tower. Tell me what you've
Yeah.
achieved this year. What
Yeah.
has the school achieved this year?" In 10 breaks, she had told me about the impact of
Mm.
what had happened over the year. We had reviewed all of her previous sort of professional development targets from the previous year and got evidence of impact just from that Lego build.
Yeah.
And
Great.
I showed her the resilient leaders model, and then said, "So what do you want next year?" So she
Mm.
then built another tower for next year and
Yeah.
was really articulate. And she said, "I need to take this to staff, but this is my initial thing." So her next thing was she was going to share her build. And, but
Yeah.
when you think about that, that's great, because then all staff can build and pull it all
Yeah.
together. Um,
Yeah.
and then, so I said, "So what is it you need?" And that was it. We were done.
Yeah. I love it. It's so simple, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
it's a little
yeah,
method, it's a few questions, and and it might even be the questions you would ask in a coaching session anyway, but it just by using the bricks, it just again gets it to so much quicker to the point. And
yeah. I think it
um
does actually simplify things as well. I think,
yeah.
sometimes we can overthink, or things can get really complex, and actually it just hones it right back down to what actually really
Well,
matters.
you know what I think part of it is? I think it's like when we end up doing some bigger models in a longer workshop with people. It's just I think there's just so much in people's minds that doing like just talking it through linearly, like talking,
Mhm.
listening, like how do you navigate that idea space? And that's why people feel overwhelmed because like I got all this stuff in my head. It's like this 3D map of ideas, almost like a mind map. Yet I need to
Yeah,
talk, and go back and forward. And even drawing, yeah, you can get it out, but just to be able to quickly and easily say to map, whether it's your whole mind or as a group, map the whole sort
yeah,
of space of the problem you're trying to sort out. I think that's what it is. I think it's just it's almost like there's cognitive overload for people, and
absolutely.
the means by which we communicate is such. It's like a small pipe versus the flood of information we have, and it's like Lego Series Play just opens that so that you can, have more
Yeah.
on the table and you can, navigate the idea space a whole lot better, whether it's individually or as a
Yeah,
team.
yeah, and sometimes it's fun to play with it and say, if I asked you to take one brick away, what would it be?
Yeah, yeah,
And then that there's, when you're working with a team that feels overloaded, has got a lot on,
mm,
and they're trying to prioritize, that's quite, the conversation around, so which bit's going to go or which bit's
yeah,
going to move, is really insightful. So yeah,
yeah,
it's or you limit the amount of bricks, and that
yeah.
that can. But what you said about drawing, yes, you can, but drawing carries so much with it, doesn't it? It's
Oh, it
whether or not you
does.
can
It
draw
does.
well.
Yeah,
It's a blank
judgment
piece
and
of paper. Yeah, it's a blank piece of paper, and there's all that. Who's going to have the pen and everything else? Whereas everybody can have the Lego,
yeah,
and you can set up the activity that you're going to do, so everybody builds and then pulls it together. So it feels more inclusive, really.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's more accessible. Like I always say that it's almost like you level the playing field because we're all learning this new language. It's like even the people that think they're Lego masters and good at Lego and
yeah,
the engineers and the architects in the room. It's like no, we're not talking about that. It's not physically how you
no,
can do it. It's the how good are you with metaphor and how good are you with story and it's not even how good. It's like everyone is good at that stuff. It's just
yeah.
I often think with Lego Serious Play, all we're doing is just giving people permission to tap into all that stuff they learned in childhood and have sort of repressed ever since the
Yeah.
stories, the metaphor, the playfulness, the use of hands, and And I think that's part of it as a facilitator, is creating that space to sort of fuel that permission. It's not even permission, it's just because that sort of implies an authority, like that I'm letting, people do it. But it's
yeah,
just, it's like an opening of the doors. It's like
yeah,
you're trying to shush away some of those cobwebs and let all the stuff that's in there out in a way that, people connect with. It was interesting before you said about some of those different techniques about what brick would you take away. I think, and limiting the number of bricks and a lot of that. I think it's interesting when I teach Lego Series Play, I teach very much what perhaps like the vanilla foundational model of, okay, we're going to do an
hmm
individual model, and here's a shed and a landscape, and it's all the
yeah,
traditional sort of easy ways to do it. But from that, there's so many things you can layer onto it, like the stuff that you said, sort of progressive builds where you add more to it, and limit yourself. And I did a session with Paul Sandbar, who uses Lego Series
yeah,
Play with coaching in LA, and he just got me to build one model, and then we ended up using that and adjusting that, and for a whole hour. And I think there's still, I mean, the method's 20, 25 years old, and there's still space to like so much to
no,
explore in terms of techniques. It's almost like the whole world doesn't know about it yet. It's like we need to give them that first step. And then I actually look forward to a world where like everyone knows how to do Lego Series Play. And then it's like everyone will be diving into all these variations. And you talked about combining it with other models, and I just, yeah, it's almost like we need to lift everyone up so they know it. And then like it's
yeah,
the innovators can take it and do all these things and weave it in all these places. So sorry, I
that's
went a bit of a
right.
rant, but I get
That's right.
excited about that vision.
Me too. I mean, I've always, well, I'm actually, everybody knows that I'm into Lego, but I've always got my little bag of Lego in my bag of
Yeah.
joy, I call it. It's in my
The bag of
handbag
joy. I
at
love
all
it.
times. Um, yeah, that's because I have an EpiPen because I'm allergic to nuts. So before I came to Lego Series Play, any handbag that I bought had to have room for the EpiPen. But
And
now my
now
husband always jokes, he's like, you, he said, you're not, when I'm looking at a bag, he says, you're not thinking about the EpiPen anymore. You're thinking about whether the Lego will
Lego.
fit in it, aren't you? And I'm like,
Just reach
yeah.
for the right thing at the right time is what you want to be doing.
I've just bought travel Lego travel Lego packs because I'm going to
Yeah.
Billund, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm also away next week and need Legos, so these are a bit more
Yeah.
squashy and lighter. So yeah, they're all primed ready to go next week.
Yeah.
So
You
you
mentioned
know,
you mentioned you're going to Billund. So is that to the interface conference over
yes,
there? Cool,
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I went there in it was 2017, 2018, and I found Michael Buckle, who runs Interface. Like he's great. He's very opening, like very open, very welcoming. And I know there's a few people like Lucy Hawthorne and some other people that I know are sort of meeting over there, which is awesome. I couldn't
yeah.
get over there this year, but it's a great conference. I love they have, they partner up with Johan Roos. Have you been to these last few
Yeah.
conferences over there? This is your
I've
first
not
one?
been to my
Oh,
first
cool.
one. I am
Great. It's
bursting
awesome.
with
Yeah.
excitement to go.
Yeah. They've partnered with Johan Roos, who's one of the inventors of Lego Series Play, and he's great. Like, he's such a character, and but really, really knows the method in depth, and has got some. We talk about innovation. He's got some really interesting ideas about bringing in other things into Lego Series Play, like softer materials, and really sort of
Yeah,
expanding the use of it. So I'm sure you'll have
exciting.
fun. And being at Legoland is always fun. The hotel there, and they put on
Yeah.
quite a nice experience. So it'll be good.
I'm just excited to see what room they put me in. I was hoping it would be
Yeah.
the pirate room.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So when I was there, there was two years I went. One of them was sort of they put me into like it was almost like the standard hotel room which overlooked the theme park. So it wasn't too themed.
Yeah.
But then the first year it was. I think I did get the pirate one, or maybe it was like an adventure castle night type one. So
Oh,
that was fun.
maybe I need to message ahead and say, if you're struggling for space, put me in the pirate room.
Maybe you should put in a request. Maybe just call up and say,
Yeah.
I
Is
get in
there
before
any
others.
way? Please let
Um,
me have the pirate room.
I don't. I think if I went now, I'd have to bring my kids because imagine like sending, like, oh, dad, like whenever I travel, they're like, Dad, can you show me the room? And I'm like, got the FaceTime call in the room, and it's like, it's the pirate room, or the fairy princess unicorn room, and I'd be like, ooh, yeah, probably should have brought the family. But
Yeah,
no, that's great,
yeah,
and I guess it goes to Lego Series Play. It's been such an interesting community. I've been around since 2012 doing it, and it's such an interesting community and where it's at. And the conferences are great, like the ones you can go to, like Interface, and we're starting to, we're thinking about doing one in Vietnam, and I want to do one in Europe and things like that. But I feel like Lego Series Plays a Method was sort of before its time, like as in like the world is sort of catching up to it, and as
Mm.
long as we keep sort of presenting it and offering it and showing it in its best light, then I just feel like it's going to keep going. Like I just can't see a method like this that I've been using for 12 years be a flash in the pan that it just doesn't. It's just got such depth. Like, and it's so interesting because it's just a way to communicate. It's not like it's teaching you anything, or it's not like there's no message behind it except just doing what you're already doing but differently, like doing
Mm.
it better, doing, having different conversations, whether it's more playful, using your hands, using stories, using metaphors. It's like, yeah, I see such a bright future for Lego Serious Play because
I can't see why there wouldn't be. I
yeah, it's
just there's just I it's magic. It is
yeah.
magical because
The only risk the only risk I can ever see is if the Lego brand do something stupid themselves, like the Lego Group. It's like, and they go down the tube, and
oh,
suddenly I can't imagine that. Like they're a nice conservative Danish company.
let's hope not. Let's hope
I
not.
can't imagine them doing anything. I mean, companies come and go, but gee, they've lasted the test of
Yeah,
time from like the 1930s. Well, it's getting up to almost 100 years. There ain't that many companies, and it's so
yeah,
interesting the relationship between the Lego Group and Lego Series Play in terms of they developed it and then they sort of couldn't quite figure out what to do with it and then they open sourced it and then I feel like the community is really developing and run with it and
yeah.
almost teaching them back at the
Yeah,
Lego
but
Group.
that's what's exciting, isn't it? I think that is it feels ethical that it is open
Mm,
and that
yeah.
people are free to use it. And to me, that is the essence of, if you were to ask me about Lego before I knew anything about this, I'd kind of link it to that anyway. I know it's a company, I
Mm,
know they sell stuff, but
yeah.
obviously I'm aware of the Lego education department. They do research at Cambridge University, not
Mm,
far from me. So,
yeah.
you know, that they are outward facing in terms of what they can do for the world as well. And I think so
Mm,
it's more than a toy company,
yeah.
much more than a toy company. So I think, yeah, I think you're right. I'd hate to think some sort of scandal would shut down anything.
I just can't imagine
But
them doing that.
we'd just have to rename it, wouldn't we? We'd just have to give it a different name at that point. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I'd say, Julia, part of that is like the actual techniques underneath Lego Serious Play or that sit alongside the actual material. Like they're just really amazing facilitation techniques. And some of them are simple and some of them are very deep. And I mean, Lego, you could do with other materials, but Lego is just so much more accessible. It's so much, you know, you could do it with other blocks. You could do it with other softer materials and pipe
yeah, but it
cleaners
doesn't
and
have the satisfying click,
exact.
does
Well,
it?
that's it. And it's there's a history there with a lot of people, and even if they don't, it still works really well. But I still think it's the best material. I think it's going to be the best material, and so yeah, I can't see that
Yeah. I
changing.
think the versatility of all the pieces, I as an educator, I used a lot of things like Play-Doh or, like you
Mm,
say, pipe cleaners or bricks, but bricks obviously can fall apart.
mm,
And the other things, it's a bit like drawing, you have to shape them. So whilst there is adaptability in that,
mm.
which you know, getting curves in Lego for a while was a bit tricky. So you've got curved
Yeah,
pieces now, so it's not quite so bad. But um, I like that though, because you have to kind of create the curves a little bit yourself as well.
yeah.
Whereas when you're having to mold something, it's again a bit like drawing. It can be
It's that artistic.
frustrating.
Yeah,
It can take longer, or it's not quite right. Whereas with Lego, it's there, so you build it,
it
and
is. It is what it is.
there's
Yeah,
something implicit in that as well that you don't. Yeah, the beauty of it when you're looking at a build and somebody asks you a question about one of the bricks, and you went, "Oh my God, I never thought about that," and there's
yeah,
the insight.
yeah, yeah.
Um, there's something in that that just every time that connects with me as an educator. The moment a little boy learned that cat spelt cat, I will
Mm,
never forget the first time with a child that I did that, and his face lit up and the joy in
mm.
his eyes was immense. And it's a similar thing when somebody has an insight, or you do. It's that, and this is back to the embodied transformation. You feel
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
feel it deep inside. There's a radiating sort of
yeah,
pulse comes out, or a flash, and you think, "Wow!"
yeah,
So there's a connection, and that it connects, doesn't it?
yeah.
It does what it
It
says on the
does.
tin.
It does. I love what you described there. Like I often say, like the reason I keep coming back to Lego Series Players is often the stories, but a big part of it that people tell, but a big part of it is seeing exactly what you saw in that little boy or girl was it's that own aha moment. It's the aha moment from within. And I think
Yeah,
I think early in my career, I started off as a trainer, so it was very much that I want them to get to my aha moment, as a trainer.
Yeah,
And it just always like, yeah, that's learning, that's training, yeah. But to just, I don't even care what their aha moment is. Like, I'll just ask a question. And as long as you see that aha moment, that something changes in their mind, that joy, that little spark of new learning, new insight, I think
yeah,
that's why I keep coming back is, yeah,
yeah,
I guess it's change. I guess it's that sort of well, you talk about embodied transformation, that sort of self-driven change that is it's just rewiring something that people are like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
And
It's
that's,
potential. It
yeah.
unlocks potential, doesn't it? And to an extent, also pulls in the self belief part of it as well. It
Mm,
becomes possible.
mm.
Um, I often, because it's about boundless learning, I
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about boundless possibilities or boundless opportunities. So it becomes the opportunity sits there, or it becomes tangible in front of you. So then
Mm,
all of a sudden it becomes more doable and you believe you might be able to do it, which I think is,
yeah,
you know, yeah, that is key really in
yeah,
terms of people thinking, yeah, I could do this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, awesome, Julia. As we're sort of wrapping up, getting towards the end of the podcast, anything else you want to share? Any sort of, whether it's about Lego Series Play, the other work that you do, maybe looking at the future of what you're doing, Lego Series Play, wherever you want to go with it. Is there
Oh
any
wow.
last sort of parting thoughts? It doesn't have to be like, like groundbreaking, meaning of life
We've
stuff.
covered, I think we've covered most of it. I think I
Yeah.
wrote down, the third question you said, what is it that you would like to leave people with? And I came back,
Mm,
there was a build I'd already done,
mm,
which is about making an impact on the world. That I had to think about the impact I wanted to make on the world. And we've covered
mm.
most of that, more
Yeah.
joy, growth in learning, inspiration to do things, and
Mm,
facilitating really connected relationships and conversations. So I guess the question, I wrote this question down this morning, if I was to ask people to go, people might want to go away and build something now. So my little
yeah.
invitation would be, I think this is my gift really, and what I'd like people to focus on is, what is the impact you want to make on the world?
Mm,
Whether that's the world for yourself or others,
mm.
because we're all different, but actually,
Yeah.
what is the impact you want to make, and build it, see what
Yeah.
happens.
I love
Because
it.
that's kind of what is now steering me in my work,
Mm,
because my work's multifaceted. I work in, I have what you might term a portfolio sort of approach
mm,
to things, because I can't work in one linear. I can't say I'm a coach. I do,
mm.
I'm an educator, or an enabler, I guess,
Yeah.
in so many different iterations. So I think what I'd really like to prompt people to think about is, what's the impact you want to make on the world? Because if you get anywhere close to that, you're going to have more joy anyway. So
Yeah. I love it.
I
I love it.
I've just been reading the book Ikigai. I've gone back to it
Mm,
because I don't know
yeah.
if you and reading about where it came from, and that that Japanese community where their reason for being was what enabled them to live joyful and purposeful lives. I think
Yeah.
if we could get close to our reason for being, that would be a good place, wouldn't it?
Oh,
So
I
that's my
love it.
gift.
I love it. Thank you. What a nice note to end on. Where can people find you? Is LinkedIn the best place? Do you have websites, email you want to
Yeah, I have
direct
a
people to?
website. I have a website, so boundlesslearning.org.uk.
Yep.
My email address is
Mhm.
julia@boundlesslearning.org.uk, so quite easy to get. I'm
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. I'm on various platforms. I've just joined Blue Sky.
Okay, cool.
I am still on Twitter. It's still there. And I have a Facebook community as well. So I'm
Cool.
around. I'm everywhere really.
Awesome. Awesome. I look Julia up.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Julia, and enjoy the conference coming up and future Lego Serious Play sessions, coaching sessions, and everything that we've talked about. So thanks so
Yeah.
much. And
Thanks,
yeah,
Michael.
look forward to the rest of your work.
Yeah, and hopefully one day we'll be in the room together. Who knows?
Hopefully, I'll next time over in the UK, we'll find
Great.
a place. I'll get a meetup going.
Great. That would be really good fun. All right.
Cool.
Take care, Michael. Have a
Thanks.
lovely
Thanks, Julia.
weekend.
You too. Bye.
All right.